honestly, I really do wish I had something pink and frilly I could wear for this video. But pink isn't really my color, and I don't have anything I can wear, which kind of sucks. But hey, at least I'm not wearing orange. I think Elle would be pretty pleased with that. So, this past weekend was a pretty interesting one for me. I watched the latest episode of Murderbot, which, if you aren't watching Murderbot, what are you doing? Get on the show, it's so good. And then I started Mobland, which is totally scratching my mob family drama itch, and I will most certainly be putting up a video about it, specifically about Ellen Mirren's Maeve, who I find absolutely delicious. You know how much I love my villainous cutthroat women. But then afterwards, I decided to do a rewatch of the iconic Legally Blonde because it will always be bae for me. And anytime I find myself feeling overwhelmed and doubting myself, that is the movie I reach for. And as expected, Elle Woods more than delivered on that. Gods, Reese Witherspoon was such a fantastic casting choice. I still can't believe that they considered Charlize Theron for the role because although I also really like Charlize's work, she's not really Elle Woods the way that Reese embodied that character, you know. And speaking of Elle, when I finished the movie after a just right runtime of an hour and 37 minutes, I realized just how much of an anomaly she is. And now that spilled into the movie because there are so many choices and decisions taken with Legally Blonde. That was a clear case of the writers deciding that it was going to be a film that would defy all expectations. From the character herself to her interaction with others to how they treated the other woman to her romantic relationships and finally to the way the film ended. Now, just in case you belong to the very small minority who possibly haven't seen the film and have no idea what I'm talking about, Legally Blonde is a 2001 movie. Yes, people, it's been 24 years since the release of the first movie. Feel old yet? Because I most certainly do. Damn. But as I was saying, Legally Blonde is a 2001 movie which stars Reese Witherspoon as Elle Woods, head of her sorority, Delta Nu, who starts the film eagerly expecting her boyfriend, Warner Huntington III, to propose. Unfortunately, he does not. And then he takes it a step further to break up with her, saying that for him to achieve his senatorial goals, he needs someone who is more serious. QL studying to get into Harvard Law because that's the school Warner is going to. Plus, she believes that doing so would prove how serious she is. It's a waste of her time because you see, Warner is a waste of her time. And when she does get into Harvard Law and meets Warner again, it is to discover that he is now engaged to another woman, Vivian Kensington, who is clearly the serious type that his family approves of. Elle realizes that Warner ain't shit and applies herself. She is, after all, a brilliant young woman, and after pulling off an incredible win of a highly popularized case, she cements herself as one of the most brilliant minds of class 2004, and the movie ends after a speech at her class's graduation. It's a feel-good movie, the type that always reminds me of happier times and, like I said earlier, encourages me when I start to self-doubt, which is often, mind you. Now, all I've said is just a quick Sparks Note summary of the film. Didn't go into much detail in case you've never seen it and want to check it out after this video. Although from this point on, I will be going in depth and talking spoilers, so be warned about that. Anyway, as I said at the start, Legally Blonde is a film that clearly set out to defy all expectations, and this was established in the first 10 minutes of the film. We see Elle as this sorority president who is clearly loved and admired by her sisters, all of whom are invested in her getting her happy ending with Warner. And when she goes shopping for the perfect dress for what she hoped will be her engagement dinner to Warner, a salesperson who overhears her conversations with her friends comes to the conclusion that Elle is nothing but a ditzy blonde with money to spare and clearly no brains. In her exact words, nothing I love more than a dumb blonde with daddy's plastic. Just as she rips off the tag that proclaims that the dress is at a larger discounted price and tries to sell it to Elle like it's just off the runway. Elle, however, in that scene acts like she's buying it before proving that one, she knows textile, which is important because her knowledge is what netted her a 4.0 in fashion merchandising. And two, that she's also well aware of the trends because she's also a student of fashion, i.e., she studied the magazines and knows that the dress that was being pitched to her is from the previous season. It's an interesting and very overt way in which the writers of the film clearly show us that Legally Blonde is a film all about setting aside your perception of Elle as a character and women who look like her because she clearly has more going for her than you would initially assume upon seeing her and hearing her talk. I mean, in her interview about the character and why she auditioned for the role after reading the script, Reese Witherspoon mentions that I was interested in exploring the difference between how someone looks and how people perceive them and how they really are. I'll add the YouTube link to the interview in the description bar. It's about 6 minutes long if you want to watch it in its entirety. But it is clear that even in pre production and before the movie was filmed, even those working on it knew exactly the kind of story they wanted to tell and how they wanted to go about it, based off of Amanda Brown's comic novel of the same name, which chronicles her own life at Stanford Law as someone who did enjoy fashion and beauty and had to juggle being judged as unserious by her peers because of her interests. With Legally Blonde and based off of Elle's interaction in the film, firstly, from when she challenged the store manager who was trying to hoodwink her, to her studying for the LSAT so she can get into Harvard Law, to her deciding that Warner is a complete bonehead and she was going to show him just how valuable Elle Woods can be, which then led to her drastic change in the eyes of her professors who saw her applying herself and becoming someone who was actually learning and actively contributing to her classes and their discussions, to her taking on Brooke's case and acquitting her of her husband's murder by getting the true murderer, Brooke's stepdaughter Chutney, to confess and understand that she was the one who accidentally shot her father, thinking it was Brooke. In all of these instances, the film has us challenging our preconceived notions about intelligence and the old belief that you can't have beauty and brains, especially if you're someone who does think about and is obsessed with fashion and style and beauty products, beauty rituals, etc. Seeing Hell's classmates and the people at Harvard Law be initially dismissive of her until they do start to realize that indeed she did have the brains to be there. Like, how else would she have passed the LSATs? Is meant to represent we, the audience's eventual come around to that realization as well. That you can't judge a book by its sparkling pink cover because there might be more to it than meet the eye if you just took the time to look a bit deeper. And then there's the fact that Elle is a sorority president. She's blonde, she's rich, she's perky, she's popular, she's clearly a queen bee amongst the pack. All of this ideally should bring together an image of a person who would be mean and snippy and cutthroat in a way that we've seen other mean girls of our ilk in media be. For example, Regina George, Catherine Mathieu, Heather Chandler. You get the gist. But Elle subverts that trope. She's charming, she's sweet, she's kind, she's very good natured and doesn't bear any grudges. And most importantly for her character, she truly is a girl's girl. And I find that a big subversion of my expectations of who Elle would be. Because I don't know about you, but back when I first saw the film, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Elle to eventually reveal who she was, that beneath that cheerful, warm, kind, and sunny exterior is someone who might just be a tad selfish and mean when the chips are down. But just as Elle Woods is meant to show us that a pretty girl who is interested in beauty and fashion can also be smart, she's also meant to show us that that same pretty girl can also be kind. And I'm not going to lie, for the longest time that threw me. Because I wondered at how believable that is. The fact that we've seen a lot of depictions of sorority girls be backstabbing each other in other films made me wonder how truly believable Elle Woods as a character is. But then, in a now archived interview with Glenn Whipp of the Los Angeles Daily News, Reese, who admits to having done her own research to better get into the headspace of a character like Elle, she mentions that by going down to Beverly Hills, hanging out in Neiman Marcus, eating in their cafe, and seeing how these women walk and speak, I got into the reality of a character. I saw how polite these women are, and I saw how much they value their female friendships and how important it is to support each other. I will leave the link to the interview in the description bar as well if you want to read it further, but it is fascinating to me and had me sitting with the fact that I didn't realize just how prejudiced I have been when thinking about women in sororities and how they interact with their sisters. Because a sorority is meant to be a family. Pledging to one is you basically accepting that these are your people and they would have your back no matter what, and vice versa. But I guess when the way in which media has often portrayed women as being in constant competition with each other, especially with regards their love life, is what has driven a lot of the films you've watched, you find yourself subconsciously buying into that bias. Which is a great segue for me to talk about yet another way in which the movie subverted our expectations, and it is a big one for me. How it treated the character of Vivian Kensington and her relationship with Elle. Because you see, in a stereotypical movie, Vivian and Elle would have fought to the bitter end over Warner, which would have been a sad state of affairs because we all know Warner Huntington III ain't shit. Instead, what Legally Blonde has happened is have Vivian and Elle both bond on how inept Warner actually is. And they in turn become friends. In the film's final credit scene, we're informed that Vivian broke up with Warner and she and Elle are now best friends, which I don't know about you, but that was a first for me. I legit cannot remember any other film where the other woman becomes the best friend of the protagonist and they choose each other instead of the dickhead that they were initially fighting over, or that the script would have had them fight over to the very end. Please let me know if there are other films who did go this route, because I personally find that interesting and would love to watch more of them. But as I was saying, Legally Blonde could have taken so many directions with Elle and Vivian. Maybe they didn't fight over Warner anymore because by the halfway point, Elle had dropped the idea of being with him after realizing that she would never be enough for his pompous ass. But they could have written Vivian's character into a hole whereby she is obsessing with one-upping Elle and proving herself better than her, even though Vivian had already gotten the man. They don't. When Vivian and Elle both show up for the first day of their internship at Callahan's firm, Elle offers the first olive branch by complimenting Vivian's outfit. And Vivian eventually makes her way over to Elle's room to express her admiration for Elle sticking by her guns and refusing to give up Brooke's alibi. It was clear in that scene in the boardroom for Vivian that she realized just how much of a girl's girl Elle Woods actually is and reached out to be her friend. An action that Elle accepts and reciprocates. I'm sure there was that bit of a time when Vivian wrongly assumed that Elle was having an affair with Callahan, but after Emmett sets things straight, she's quick to realize just how badly she fucked up in that instance and wants to make amends. Which leads to the collaboration that has Elle take up a position as Brooke's lawyer whilst being a law student. And then there's even Elle's friendship with Paulette, who is clearly not in the same socioeconomic class as she is, but that isn't a barrier to her friendship with her. Theirs starts as a transactional relationship, i.e. Paulette is her manicurist, who Elle comes crying to the first day she learns about Warner's engagement, and throughout the course of the film, they become very good friends. It is yet another way the film subverts our expectations because Elle is meant to be this uppity girl based off of her characterization. And yet, as with all things Elle Woods, the anomaly that she is, she's in no way uppity in her relationship with Paulette or with anyone else really. Instead, she's kind. She's sweet. She's down to earth, or as down to earth as she can be, considering that she does take her dog Bruiser to the saloon for treatment. And then there's the bit with the relationship. One would have thought that Elle would be all about that life, considering our introduction to her is her obsessing about her potential engagement. But the film quite quickly diverts its attention from that. Her focus isn't on getting Warner back, but instead her focus is on proving her capabilities in law school. Which is a big change for me because often our expectations of a sorority preppy girl like Elle is that her focus would be on her eventual match, her becoming a missus and entering the high society that she would take to like fish in water. And yet that isn't what Legally Blonde delivers, even though it is what it initially set us up for. Having the film not focus on Elle's romantic relationship does her character such a big boon because then the focus is on her accomplishments, her goals, her desires, her wins, and achievements. And to have at that ending Warner come crawling back like the cockroach he is, hoping that he can ride the coattails of her victory and popularity and her iconic, if I'm going to be a partner by the time I'm 30, I need a boyfriend who is not a complete bonehead statement, is something that has lived rent free in my head for the last 2 decades of my life. Absolute exquisite shit right there. And then there's the fact that the ending of the film was initially meant to be Elle kissing Emmett after winning the Brooke Taylor Wyndham case, but that was scrapped, thank the gods, because think about it for a minute. Legally Blonde was not a film about Elle's romantic relationships. Having Emmett be centered at a moment of personal and professional victory for her would have felt like an insertion that didn't make sense for the story we had gotten so far. Although, to be fair, I could see why that thought was initially considered because the film started with her hoping to be engaged to Warner, and so them ending it with her being with someone better could have worked, in theory. But I prefer the fact that they didn't do that because, once again, the focus of this film is on Elle Woods. And Legally Blonde, up until that point, had done everything he could to go against the grain. So it made sense that they continued in that line. Elle gets to walk through the doors to the awaiting flashes of cameras as she's set to be interviewed after winning such a high-profile case. And we skip to 2 years in the future with her graduating from law school and having been voted as her class's elected speaker, which for me does 2 things. It brings the story full circle because the start had her entering Harvard Law and the end has her graduating from Harvard Law. In both instances, the focus is all on her. And secondly, it signified that she had won the respect of her peers. They collectively chose her to be their representative and give the speech. And I don't know about you, but that was what had the tears falling for me. Because it is incredible to watch how far she's come. Even seeing Enid cheering for her from the stands, Enid that had clashed with Elle so many times because she was convinced she was a vapid sorority girl who would have been homophobic to her should she have pledged to a sorority, which Elle disproves. Seeing Enid be that delighted for her at that speech given, it healed something in me. Legally Blonde healed something in me. I didn't have the words for it when I first watched the film because I was a kid. But as an adult now, however, I really do appreciate what the film was going for. Did it make a mess with certain stereotypes? By God, yes. There are some parts where this film did not age well at all and had me face palming so hard. If you'd like for me to make a video on that, please let me know in the comments. But other than that, I had an incredible ride. Plus, having her relationship with Emmett and his upcoming proposal added as a postscript because the focus was meant to be on Elle achieving her dreams and being cheered on and supported by those in her life who are delighted with her and not her relationship was just chef's kiss for me. I love this film to bits. But that is just me, of course. Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions as well. Please drop them in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share it if you want to. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.